All right. Welcome everyone to our monthly stewardship town halls that we've had the pleasure of coming together and doing these every month. And we'll look to do November, even though we'll be just before Thanksgiving, and December will be just before Christmas. But as always, we've got a great set of speakers lined up. And this evening is no exception to that. We have a very interesting topic that I'm looking forward to, as excited as we prepared for this evening, around planned giving. And we've talked a lot about stewardship and other things that we're doing. And stewardship, as we always say, in the true Christian stewardship of talents, treasures, and time. Today, we'll focus a little bit on treasures, but certainly, the aspects of as we've all, support the church throughout our lives. There's an opportunity for us, even at the end of our lives, to continue the legacy and to embolden and strengthen the future of our church, our parishes, and our church here in this country. So it's I think something that, I think it's something that a lot of our parishes don't do a lot of, or do it well. I know in my home parish, we've had a couple of very significant gifts, but it's been somewhat where it just kind of happened and we haven't planned for it. So tonight we hope to start to get the wheels turning, that hopefully you can go back to your parishes, meet with your stewardship committees, meet with your parish council, meet with your proistamino, and really see what can your parish do to motivate and to create a planned giving program. This evening, we have Father James Corderis, who joins us here. We were commenting earlier, just a few hours before his name's day tomorrow. So I think last month I had the benefit of sharing my name's day with all of you, and this month we have Father James on the eve of his name's day. So Hronia Pola, Father James.
Thank you.
As Bill did to me, we would tug your ear if we could. As always, Father James is joining us from the East Coast. So we appreciate him so late at night, not only joining us, but presenting tonight. And we've got Bill Navridis from San Diego, who will also be sharing some of his experience, and Maria Pappas, who are as professional fundraisers, can help us really understand what does happen. Many of us are not professional fundraisers, but we all do fundraising in one capacity or another. And hearing from Bill and Maria will be very valuable to us. And then Charlie DeMoss is also here to give us the other angle of planned giving, but really thinking about from a financial, legal, structural way. There's things that need to be done. It's not simply an envelope that gets passed when it comes to planned giving. So Charlie will share some of his experiences, his perspectives to help us all. As always, we encourage questions and interactivity. Feel free, we'll monitor the chat. If a question comes up and you don't want to interfere with the flow of the presentation, put it in the chat, we'll come back to it. If you want to jot it down there in front of you and you want to ask it towards the end, please do so. Again, we encourage the type of dialogue we should be having here as these town halls. It isn't simply pure presentations, and any experiences that you've had in your parish that you would like to share, we would welcome. We'll try to wrap things up by 8 o'clock Pacific. So we try to keep these in 90 minutes. I know everyone has long days, and we come into these Zooms and it extends a day even longer. So with that, and to keep the flow of this evening, I'd like to ask Father James if you can bless us with an opening prayer, and I'll put the presentation up once we're done with the prayer, Father.
Great. Thank you, Steve. Heavenly King, the comfort of the Spirit of truth, present in all places and filling all things, treasury of blessings and giver of life, come and abide in us, cleanse us from all impurity, and save our souls, O gracious one. Amen.
Amen. All right, Father, just give me a moment to do the screen share.
We can skip right past the title slide.
Okay. see my screen. Let's go to the PowerPoint. We will go first and project. All right. Brother Jim.
Thank you, Steve. I want to thank you all for being here. My name is Father Jim Corderas. It's my privilege to serve the Archdiocese as Director of Stewardship, Outreach, and Evangelism. And my experience is having grown up in a parish and served on parish councils and served as a parish council president before coming to the priesthood. It really informs the work of this department. Stacy Stathoulis, who's also on the call, we are the staff of the department, he and I. And everything we do is done with the parish in mind, putting resources in the hands of parish leadership so that they can do the things that they want to do but may not have the time to do or to organize. And so that's what brought us to this place. And my history, my experience as a parish council president brings to mind one thing that really informed us doing the planned giving resources. When I served as parish council president, I was on the parish council for 6 years at St. Mary's Greek Orthodox Church in Minneapolis. I think you may know Father Anthony Coniaris served there for over 50 years, and he was the priest as I served there. And he did this thing in the bulletins every week, every communication, every newsletter, everything that went out to the parishioners had one line in it. Steve, could you go to the next slide? Please remember the church in your will. Everything had it in it. And we saw it so many times. We saw it's probably in our DNA. Please remember the church in your will. We saw it over and over in every bulletin we saw every Sunday. Please remember the church in your will. I never really thought about it. It was just always there. As I served on the parish council, I was a stewardship chair for a while. Never really thought about it. And then, I mean, we get a bequest every now and then, and it would help with the budget. But then in the 2 years I served as parish council president, I got a call from a man named John Lagares. And John Lagares told me that his brother had just passed away and that he had remembered the church in his will. And I was glad to hear that he had remembered us at the will. I was sorry for the passing, but glad to hear that he thought of us in his will. And we met because he wanted to meet and tell me about the bequest. If you go to the next slide. The bequest was this block of properties in the uptown area of Minneapolis, prime real estate. It changed the whole financial outlook of the church to have income properties in a prime location like that. It changed everything. Just one line in the bulletin every week, getting people to think in terms of the church when they make their financial plans for end of life plans. It can change everything. So planned giving is really critical to the long-term viability of the parish. And it's really important to help our parishioners to keep us in mind and to continue their stewardship beyond their lifetime. It's really important to keep that message out there in front of the people. So as when I then came to New York and was given the position of Director of Stewardship and Outreach, this was something that was always in the back of my mind, but it's a very complicated undertaking to put together resources for planned giving. But I knew that it was just as hard for the parishes. What we try to do is make you not have to reinvent the wheel. So we put together a set of resources that you can use turnkey, or you can use them to customize and make your own. We go to the next slide, Steve. So we came up with this set of resources to help you to implement a planned giving program in your parish. There are a number of aspects to it, but it's a pastoral approach to helping people plan for end of life issues. It's not just here's how you give to the church through planned giving. It's here's how you plan for end of life issues. And here's how you let people know how you want to be taken care of in the end of your life. And here are some ways that you can remember the church as you consider all those aspects for the end of life issues. So that was our whole goal, was to put together a package that was pastoral and help people to be stewards for eternity. Go to the next slide, please. One of the best resources we put together, I think, that goes with this plan is a document. It's an 11 by 17 folded in half. So it's a lot of information. There's a lot of information. And it goes through all the aspects of things that we as clergy and as church leaders deal with fairly often, because we deal with funerals on a regular basis, whereas individuals, they, thankfully don't deal with funerals that often, but they need to know, what can we do? What can we not do? What's expected? What are the traditions and what's not allowed, so that they don't want to make any mistakes. Father Kalivas, our liturgics professor at school, would say, you can make a mistake at a wedding, you can make a mistake at a baptism, but don't make a mistake at a funeral. You don't want to make mistakes on end of life issues, especially when it comes to planning for the end of life for a funeral and all the things that go with it. So this document helps someone. And if a priest or is going to the hospital and it's clear the prognosis is not good, this is a very helpful document in a very pastoral manner to the person who has to try to understand and make plans for something they've never really done before. So this helps them to lay out a plan. If they can speak to the person whose prognosis is not good, they can talk these things over with them, or they can at least go through these so that they're prepared when that happens. So it's making it easier to say goodbye. Do you have a plan? So that's one of the documents that really will help you on the pastoral side of this equation. Steve, could you go to the next slide? Now, this is a really helpful document. It's an Orthodox living will. Why does it have to be Orthodox? Because Orthodox has specific issues they deal with at the end of their life, and certain things that are allowed and that are not allowed. So you don't want someone putting their living will together and requesting, for example, cremation or something that's just not allowed. All those aspects are dealt with in the Five Wishes document. Five Wishes is an organization, but we worked with them to create an Orthodox living will, which is a legal document in 50 states. As far as we know, we've had it checked by some attorneys, and it is a legal document if you get it notarized in 50 states. These things are available to order from Orthodox Marketplace. I think Five Wishes is only $2. And if you were to go to have this kind of work done by a professional, it would cost you a lot more. Of course, you should have it checked by a professional, but these are documents that can at least help you go through the ideas of how you want to be taken care of, or how a person wants to be taken care of during the final days. Next slide, please. These are some of the other documents we put together to help parish leadership when they try to put these things together. This is how parishioners, when they've made a plan to give a gift to the church, they notify the church so we know of it, because it's important that the church have an understanding of what can be expected and what a person has stated in their will as it pertains to the church. If we can go to the next slide, there are a couple more of these. This just goes through some of the basic terminology for people who are doing it for the first time. And then there's a frequently asked question also, which is the next slide, Steve, the frequently asked questions. But I just wanted you to see, these are fairly well thought out documents. There's a lot there. It's on the Stewardship website, stewardship.goarch.org website. And you can really go in there and mine it for information. And like I said, it can be used as a turnkey. You can use it the way it's set up and just use it, set it up with your parish, or you can take the information and customize it. We have no qualms, Stacy and I. We love it when people take our stuff and use it the way it is. We love it when they take it and customize it to their parish's needs specifically. So take this information, use it in any way you see fit. And it's good to get this kind of information out in your newsletters, on your websites, on every other possible area, just to keep people thinking in terms of end of life planning. If we could go to the next slide, please. One more. Thank you. So in the packet of resources is a plan for initiating a plan giving program. You know, we talk about doing things all the time in the parish. We talk about doing them, but it's like the centipede with 100 legs. We don't know which one goes first. How do we start out? What do we do first? So we lay out a plan of action for you and the parish leadership of how to go about setting up a parish plan giving program. So first of all, if we go to the next slide, please. Without the priest on board, this is definitely not going to have any traction. The clergy has to be involved. It's absolutely a must that you have the full commitment and support of the parish priest, because as the spokesperson for the parish, he's going to keep it in the front of the parishioners, on their minds, in all communications, and mentioning it from time to time. And also remember on those occasions when it comes up that he has the information to share, because he's often in that position where people need this information and they come to him. So the clergy has to be on board. Plan giving has to be part of the stewardship committee, maybe not the actual committee, but at least coordinating with the stewardship committee, because it's related. It's not the same, but it's related. When you build your team, you want to build your team from current and past parish council members, stewardship committee members, and people who have already made gifts, large planned gifts to the church, because they're already in the mindset and they can speak to their peer groups and others from experience of what it's like and how fulfilling it is to make these kinds of gifts to the parishioners. And also, as part of the plan, you need to identify expert volunteers who could come and answer all technical questions, because there's a lot of technicalities in creating a plan giving, financial concerns, tax concerns, and just which plan is the best fit for the person's situation. So we need to locally find those professionals, whether they're elder care attorneys or financial planners, whatever it happens to be, to help the people to find the right answers to make the best fit. And if you can find volunteers in your community, that's a good thing to do. If you need to find professionals, you can bring them in to do seminars and to explain to the people the possibilities for them in their plan giving. Go to the next slide, please. The first thing you do when you make a plan, first thing you do is to be the why guy, as Bill likes to say. Why are we doing this? We have to give them the reason why. They have to understand that it's important for them to make a charitable gift. Not important for the church, which it is. It's important for them as an Orthodox steward to make a charitable gift and have a long-term positive effect on the ministries of the church. Long after they're gone, they will change lives of people who are benefited by the gift that they make to the church for years and years and generations to come. They also get substantial tax benefits and current as well as estate tax benefits by making a gift like that. So it's important to put it back in their perspective, make sure they understand that this is a benefit to them as well. Why would they want to do this? Because this is part of their spiritual growth that goes right up to their last breath. They are continuing to support the church, which has been there for them. We go to the next slide. You can use the materials from the Archdiocese to build your case, and I think it's important that you do that. But your parish may have a completely different set of reasons and case. Make things as personal and as direct to your community as possible, because it really has to come across as being specific to your people. You need to be able to direct your parishioners to experienced professionals in the area of bequests, matching gifts, gifts of cash, gifts of securities. These are all complicated areas of specialty, gifts of appreciated assets. There are a lot of ways. Charlie and I were talking earlier about the ways of making gifts out of IRAs when you have to make your distribution after age 72. It's helpful to make that gift directly to the church, and that's a benefit to you and to the church to make a gift directly. That way you avoid certain taxes and also appreciated assets. So there are a lot of technicalities. So it's always good to have a professional who can advise you specifically on the best ways to make your gifts. So can we go to the next slide? So remember the church in your will or estate plan. This phrase should be on everything we put out, on everything, every communication as much as possible from the parish. Remember the church in your will or estate plan. It should just become part of the DNA of the parish, of the people, that they always remember when they are thinking about the church or thinking about any kind of financial plan, that, oh, I need to remember the church. Of course, I need to remember the church in my plan. And we can also ask people, do you have a living will? And we could offer them, if we kept a supply of the living wills in our office, church office, and said, do you have a living will? Contact the church office for a living will. It's an entree, it's a door opening for you to offer them all of the resources that go together with the living will. Do you have a plan literature, and also the plan giving literature. So there are ways that we can find out where people are in the thought process and ask them if they need a living will or they'd like a living will, contact the church office. And then you can always have that be your list for follow-up. When you have your team ready, they can follow up with those individuals. You go to the next slide, please. As former stewardship chair, and not a very good one at that, I learned that you don't just send out mail and then sit back and wait for the response to come in. Mail is only the beginning, and it's not even really a beginning. You can send out information, but this kind of work is really done through personal contact. And you can set up whatever kind of personal contact you want to do. I think you could start with seminars. You'd be surprised how well attended seminars are when you bring in a financial or a legal professional to talk about end of life planning, all the issues that come into end of life planning. People are living longer and longer, and they're worried about being able to take care of themselves. And if they have to finance the any kind of care, long-term care that they'll need to have. And also they want to make sure that they're doing the right things with their estate planning. So people will attend these seminars, and that is also an opportunity to share with them the idea of plan giving. Visitations are always good. We talk about visitations with stewardship. I know Bill had the plan that he went over as far as visiting people for stewardship giving. But I think visitations in this case is even more important because it's all about planning for a very serious time in people's lives. It's a time to talk to them about how they visualize the end of their life, how they visualize being taken care of, all the things that we can offer them to help them plan for that, as well as the plan giving aspect of those days. They want to know what they're going to do. Peer groups are very good for raising awareness and getting people to consider making a plan gift. If you have a couple of people who have made plan gifts and their peer groups could gather together in sort of any kind of a gathering for them to share ideas about how it was like to give and the vehicles that they used, and to encourage others to do that among their peers. That's an excellent way to raise awareness and to get people to consider making a plan gift. You need to have prepared a parish complete packet of information, which we provide to you. If you want to use turnkey, we have it exactly as it's done. And if you want to customize it, if you have that talent in your parish, you could prepare your own complete packet of information specific to your parish, which I think is always the best way to go because it's personalized and people visualize their own parish. And then on your stewardship cards, on your stewardship communications, place a checkbox on that stewardship card that I'd like to receive information on plan giving or end of life planning from the plan giving committee. I'd like to receive information on that. That allows people to let you know that they're interested in doing something like this. There are a couple of things that we need to consider about receiving plan gifts. There are other considerations. You want people to give gifts as much as possible, unrestricted gifts. Restrictions on gifts can complicate many factors of how we manage the money, how we handle the money. So unrestricted gifts are the best. Not off. Sometimes people are concerned about that and they want to put restrictions where they have something in mind. I was at a meeting in Florida about 2 years ago, and a gentleman came up to me. He was fairly affluent, and he said, "You know, I just sold a house for several $1 million, and I want to give it to my church, but I don't trust what they're going to do with it. I know they'll tell me now what they're going to do with it, but one generation from now, how do I know that they're going to be taking care of this and doing what I want with it, or that they won't just throw out what I've tried to establish and what I've asked them to do?" So it's really important to us to create an atmosphere of trust, and an endowment or a foundation related to the church will always help that to happen. The parish I served in Minneapolis as a layperson, established a foundation. And it started with just $5,000, and people started to add in. It's now well over, so I think, a couple $1,000,000, and it's changed their financial outlook as well as to how they manage their money. And it's because people trusted that it was going to be handled well. It was established with a board, and it was managed by someone that a group of people that people knew would handle money well, and they felt comfortable leaving their funds. But that's a real important aspect of people trusting that they'll be given, thanks, Steve, that their funds will be used in the manner that they intended. So the other is to ensure proper expenditure of restricted gifts. If someone gives for a purpose, it has to be assured that they will be used for the purpose intended. And that is part of our fiduciary responsibility. But we just have to make sure that we keep the records and we know what the intended gift was for and dedicated to, for dedicated funds, and that it's used for the purpose intended. When you receive restricted gifts, though, sometimes they may not be within the scope of the mission of the church. They may say we want to leave money to the church to do this thing. And it may be completely outside the scope of the church. It may be something they can't do, or it's not something that they want to do. So to receive that would put them in a difficult situation. Sometimes, unfortunately, you have to not accept a gift. If it's going to be a burden or it's not within the scope of the church's mission, sometimes we have to actually decline a gift respectfully. And the other issue that we need to make sure of is that there are no unforeseen liabilities wrapped up in the gift. For example, if someone gives a real estate property to the church, you have to make sure there are no liabilities that go with it, or legal liabilities, or hazardous waste that's stored under the property. You have to make sure that you're not getting the church into a situation where someone is getting rid of a property, and you're going to have more of a burden than it's actually worth. So we really have to be careful and not get too excited until we're sure that it's something that really serves the church and doesn't put us in a bad situation. I hate to be negative, but we also have to be very cautious when we do things like this. We've seen all kinds of different approaches to church giving, and we need to be a little bit cautious and to make sure we don't put the church in a difficult situation. Steve, next question, next slide. When Lou Kirkos and I put this program together, Lou's now the finance chairman for the Archdiocese, but he was on the Stewardship Committee, and we worked together on this plan. We thought that it needed to be an organized plan. There had to be a society within the church or an organization within the church that acknowledged and organized people who had done, given, or pledged a planned gift. So we called it the Eternal Light Society because it was sharing the information, it was sharing the gift long-term. We're keeping the light burning long-term. So if you establish a group like this, an Eternal Light Society, you can call it whatever you want. We use the Eternal Light Society. You inform parishioners of the purpose. You can host regular events for those people who have made a commitment to the church. And they would be dinners, seminars, financial seminars, religious seminars, whatever seems to be helpful to the people who have made the gifts. And then plan an annual Sunday of recognition. You have an Ecclesia service for the living. You have memorials for those that have passed. And then you have a fellowship hour in their honor. And you could even go so far as to have lapel pins for people who are members of your Eternal Light Society. And it becomes a thing. It becomes a part of the culture. Like I said, a part of the DNA of the parish that, yes, we think long-term. We are making long-term gifts. We want to support our church long-term, and we have done so. And it builds on itself. It becomes a real thing, a real part of the makeup of the parish. So the whole goal here is to make planned giving just central to the life of the parish. And that completes what I have to say. I hope that was helpful. And Steve, we're going to take questions at the end. Am I right?
Yeah, and of course, questions are always welcome, also in between the speakers. Father, I appreciate you finishing on this particular note. As we had prepared for this evening, I think this is one of the things I think that both in many ways inspired me most about a planned giving program is that, we talk about it with the very sober reality that we all will face that end, and yet we can, even before that, share that with our parishioners, with our families, and make it something that creates that energy that Father talked about here, this eternal light society, or however, whatever the way the parish wants to handle it, but that it becomes the norm and doesn't become a once in a while exception. And I was talking to some people at church yesterday, and the reality is that the generations, even before many of us, built the churches in this country, and we were all benefactors of it. And we were a generation that prospered, and we were blessed with many, many gifts in our lives, sort of the post-war generation. And in many respects, it's our responsibility now to help build that foundation for the future. And we've talked about on these town halls how difficult that will be, how the demographics aren't working necessarily in the way we would like, and that we know we need to revitalize our parishes, our church, our youth. And being able to do this is as our parting gift is important. And again, what Father put here was the realities that it doesn't have to be done. We can celebrate it even while we're all still here. So Father Ted also made a great comment in the chat, and no doubt, a vision, a strategy. People have to have that confidence in giving money. They have a choice there. There's family members, there's other nonprofits. They do want to know that the church will be good stewards of the funds, and it will further the mission and the vision of the parish. So as we've talked about, establishing that strategic plan, establishing that vision, I think will inspire even more of the giving. With that, let me turn it over to Maria, because I think she can even build on that and provide us some additional perspective. So Maria.
Hi, Steve. Thanks so much. And thanks everyone for coming. I like to say fundraising is a team sport, that we all get to be members of the team. I once heard Gerald Panis in a major gift training say, you can't milk a cow by sending a letter. So I just want to amplify Father's comment about planned giving, and fundraising in general is not a mail solicitation type of a campaign. These gifts are much better done in person and face to face. 2020 was a great year for giving, especially among high net worth and affluent individuals. High net worth individual fundraising increased by 48% in 2020. And I share that with you because, in the spirit of generosity, if people are feeling like giving, it's a good time to ask them to give. And that includes planned giving. Also, Father talks about the fact that we don't need to be the experts. I think what holds people back from planned giving often is they think they have to know everything about a charitable remainder trust and how to do that. And you really don't need to know all of the ins and outs. I've been raising money for over 30 years. And to be honest, I don't know all the technicalities of planned giving. But if you talk about it and get people to think about giving in this way, all you really need to do is send them to their trust attorney or their accountant, and they can help with all the details. But our job becomes just making it public and increasing awareness for people. In 2017, there was a Tax Cut and Jobs Act in which many people were worried about charitable giving in general, and if it would start to fall apart in our country based on the fact that the standard deduction increased and the need for people to itemize became less and less. But I'm here to tell you that really didn't happen. There's some studies that have come out, and 2018 giving may have dropped just a tiny bit, but it picked right back up again in 19 and 2020. And many people attribute that to the fact that the economy is strong and there was a lot of giving in response to the pandemic. So again, the environment is good for giving right now, and we should take advantage of people feeling good about giving, and that's always a good time to ask. One of the things that we see is many more people are giving through vehicles like a donor advised fund, which they can put one-time tax deductible contribution into a fund, and then they can give over time. But interestingly, the second most common vehicle for giving recently is through IRAs, which Father mentioned. So if you're 70 and a half, you can make a charitable contribution directly through your IRA to the church and not be taxed on that as income. So you don't take it out and then make the gift, but the gift goes directly from your IRA to the church. So I would encourage letting people know that this is a possibility, because people are giving this way and they just may not think that they can use that type of vehicle to give to the church. We are seeing a slight dip nationwide in people belonging to religious organizations, and that can impact giving to churches. However, religious giving did grow by a tiny bit, about 1%, even though the overall giving increased quite a bit more. So religion is losing market share a little bit on giving. That might make us need to work a bit harder. It's still the largest subsector, with 28% of all gifts going to religion, and individuals are still the ones that most of the philanthropy comes from in our country. Over 80% of all donations are made from individuals. So that's good for us. That means it's people that are the ones that are giving, and that's where churches get our support from. And that religion still tends to be very high on their list of places that they like to give. High net worth individuals like also to give to basic needs, and especially this past year, and higher education, but religion is right up there. I would just say on the planned giving efforts to keep it simple and to keep the messaging, as Father said. When the pandemic hit in my own organization, we put a line in our signature email block that says, please consider giving during these times, with the donate now button. Which also kind of brings me to the fact that online giving has increased, especially this past year. And so we need to make it easy for people to give to the churches online. Planned gift probably isn't going to happen online, but it's just good practice to make it easy for people to give online. And if it's possible, it's always a good idea to allow people to make a recurring gift online. So for instance, they could go in and give $100, and if you have the ability in your website to say, would you like to do that monthly, or would you like to do that quarterly? Then that's a way of encouraging people to continue to give. I would agree 100% with many of the things that Father said. Advertise in bulletins, newsletters, emails, hold an information session. We used to do these at the Heart Association years ago, and people come, they want to hear, they want to learn about this type of giving. So I'm sure many of you have people in your own parishes that are professionals, wealth managers or whatnot, that you could ask to have them come speak. People come, and then they kind of make the connection that this is a way that they could give and provide to the church. I like the idea of forming a legacy circle or legacy society of some sort as well. I think that's always a really good idea. I think that most people, they want to care for their family first, and that's completely understandable. They want to give to their kids, they want to give to their grandkids. But often a very small percentage of a very large estate could make a big difference to the receiving organization. So sometimes I heard a coworker one time say, give 3%, give 5%. The family won't feel it, but the church will. And you always hear the story about the little old lady who made a $25 check to the church and then left her house, and it ends up being a 7-figure gift. The last planned gift that my own organization got, we don't get that many. The last one we got was $1 million. So there's a lot of money to be had in planned giving for sure. Last couple of things I would just leave you with is studies show that married couples tend to make these types of decisions jointly. So it's a good idea to ask the spouses together. That being said, women tend to be the culture keepers in their households. So don't forget about engaging the female of the house, the wife, the mother, in these kinds of decisions, because they often have a lot of influence. but couples do tend to make decisions like this jointly. So it's good to ask a couple together. And then finally, I would also suggest having kind of a start and finish to a campaign season. End of year is often when people like to give and they like to wrap up their giving. I would say if you started around November 1st or the middle of November and ran a campaign and through the end of December, people will respond to timelines and deadlines, and like that there's a start and finish. You're not just asking every time, they turn around. We actually see, one of the studies I just read was that sometimes one reason why high net worth individuals stop giving is because they feel like they're asked too much. So I think a start and a finish to a campaign, whether it is your annual fundraising campaign or a planned giving campaign, is a good idea. And doing it towards the end of the year when people are trying to make their last minute donations and make decisions for the following year is probably a good time to do that. So I will leave you with those thoughts and turn it over to my brother, Bill.
Thanks, Maria. Bill?
Thank you, Steve. So it's hard. My sister's a hard act to follow. She's been doing fundraising for 30 years. She got me into this wonderful nonprofit about 20 plus years ago. I want to give a shout out to my dad and my brother who are also on this call. So thank you for joining us. And I wanted to share with you, first off, the epistle reading from yesterday, which was from St. Paul's second letter to the Corinthians, which is chapter 9, verses 6 through 11. Because it really hit me for this presentation. Brethren, he who sows sparingly will also reap sparingly, and he who sows bountifully will also reap bountifully. Each one must do as he has made up his mind, not reluctantly or under compulsion, for God loves a cheerful giver. And God is able to provide you with every blessing in abundance, so that you may always have enough of everything and may provide in abundance for every good work. As it is written, he scatters abroad, he gives to the poor, his righteousness endures forever. He who supplies seed to the sower and bread for, he who supplies seed to the sower and bread for food will supply and multiply your resources and increase the harvest of your righteousness. You will be enriched in every way for great generosity, which through us will produce thanksgiving to God. I read the above to say, this is what it tells me, God can and will bless those efforts. So my fellow Orthodox Christians, we are all planned giving prospects. To what level, of course, varies by individual. Over the next 10 to 20 years, planned giving will become an increasingly important fundraising tool for nonprofits. Investing in planned giving or estate planning programs now can help ensure that a nonprofit will thrive far into the future. Why, you might ask? Because we are coming up right now on what's called the Great Wealth Transfer. I'm not sure if any of you have heard of that, but me and Maria and others like Kristen that are in nonprofit definitely know what that is. So the Great Wealth here is what the Great Wealth Transfer is. The New York Post recently reported that baby boomers, which is probably most of us, born between 1946 and 1964, are the richest generation in history, controlling at least 70% of all disposable income. Baby boomers are aging and preparing to transfer an estimated $30 trillion through their wills and estate plans into the next, over the next 2 decades. This money will be distributed among their children, grandchildren, and their charities of choice, hopefully their church. Now more than ever, nonprofits and the Orthodox Church really need to develop a robust bequest or planned giving initiatives to position ourselves to receive these assets from loyal and new donors. And Father Jim gave us some great ideas about how to do that. And I can't stress enough this Great Wealth Transfer. We talk about this a lot in my shop. I work at a hospital. I've been there for 16 plus years, and I do hospital and hospice fundraising. And we are seeing, like Maria said, a lot of gifts from the older generation, let's say. But those of us that are, between the 1946, 1964, we really need to start thinking about our wills and our estates and our trusts. And I put in the chat, as Father Jim had mentioned, about remembering doing these things before you actually pass or before it's the end, and really to do it even like in our generation, someone like me, I just turned 60 years old, to do it now and then almost like get it over with. So you're going to leave this to the church, you're going to leave this to the charity, you're going to leave this to your kids, but then you just go on and live your life. and you are able to continue your life and do, wonderful things. But, kind of, I guess to me, having that pressure at the very end, it's kind of hard. And from a fundraising perspective, you kind of might lose some dollars that could be given to the charity. So I work for a company called Grossmont Hospital Foundation, and we receive legacy gifts. We call them legacy gifts many times from people we have no idea who they are. And again, like Maria says, that little old lady that gave you $25, maybe $100, maybe gave something to a direct mail piece. For the church, it could be the man or woman that comes to church every Sunday, that goes to all the liturgies, even the weekday ones, to the Vespers. They may not be your Jeannie Rangos or your George Marcus or your, folks like that, let's say, but they're the people that just love the church, that really, really want to give. We have seen at my church, St. Spiridon in San Diego, a couple planned gifts over the years. Like Father Jim said, they were not asked. They were just given. And it was basically from some little old ladies that just loved the church so much and wanted to give, give everything they had. And I think in both cases, we got everything they had, including all of their clothes. So I would suggest, though, that, if we can find out about these people beforehand, you use that as leverage, really. I mean, we have two donors, separate couples that made a lot of money in town. One that gave $5 million for our heart and vascular building, we put their name on it, and one that gave to another building that we wouldn't even ask money for. Both of the gentlemen died this year within a couple months of each other. The wives are still around. They probably gave about 3 or 4 years ago. But all that time, we got to develop closer relationships with them. We got to thank them in front of our gala and, at our gala and other activities throughout the community. And it really made others think about, what can I do? Maybe I can't do $5 million gift. Maybe I can do a $100,000 gift. Well, many of us on this call, I'm assuming, are from California or somewhere on the West Coast. So let's face it, if you own a home in California, 10, 15 plus years, your home has gone up in value, right? So part of that, maybe you don't leave it all to the children and you leave part of it to the church. So I would definitely consider that. I did want to share an example, and he's not on the call today. He's been on other calls, but there's a gentleman named Gary Wallner. He's from Castro Valley Church and Church of the Resurrection. His family was one of the founding members of the Castro Valley Church, as were my yaya and papu and my aunt and uncle. So we've known their family for years. So let's just say, for example, Gary was, and he's very involved in the church and has been probably 40, 50 years, right, Steve? It's what I'm guessing. So let's say Gary decides he's going to leave something to the church, whatever it is. The amount is really regardless. So then he tells one of his best buddies, George Sophia from the church, hey, George, did you ever think about this? I want to lead something to the church. Then George tells his kumbado, and so on, and so on, and so on. And it really is that peer-to-peer relationships. You tell your friends, you tell your family, you tell your kumbado, you tell the person that's next to you in the pew at church. You just continue to tell them what, that this is available. And at my hospital, we do galas and golf tournaments, and they're very successful. And we do them, every year, and I staff those. But you can get more money than our galas will raise, which is $300,000 in my case. You can get more money from one planned gift from working that person, let's say, for might be a year, might be longer. It takes a long time sometimes for a planned gift, but you can get a lot a greater planned gift, I guess is what I want to say, from an individual, if you really just tell them about it. Again, some people don't really even know that this is an opportunity. So everyone on this call, priest and layman alike, are all planned giving prospects. Why, you might ask? Well, first off, you join this call. Secondly, you're taking a leadership role in your church, and then I told you about the living in California. And we've had, when I was the president of the church 7-8 years ago, I had a couple come up to me and say, we want to leave you $2 or $3 million, to the church. And I said, wow, that's wonderful. Now in this case, I don't believe they have any kids, maybe one or so. I'm not really positive. But they actually gave me their lawyer's business card. And I said, if anything happens to us, call this gentleman, and they want to keep it anonymous, which again is fine. But I have the card and I talk to them, and this was probably, like I said, 7-8 years ago. And you really don't know until you start talking to people. At our church, Last year, we had probably 6 or 7 people in July pass away. Many of them were 85 and up. Many of them were quite wealthy. But I don't know if we ever even talked to them about a planned gift. Now, some of them weren't big churchgoers. Okay, that's fine. But they were long-time parishioners. So I just came to think to myself, if the Mellises and the Pappases and the this and the that would give to the church, and it was known, after they pass or before, whatever their wishes are, how would that really allow other people to give too? And many others would really give. The last thing that I want to share is those of us that were on the call last time, Bill Marianis was our speaker, and he did a fabulous job. And he did say, pick up the phone and call the parishioners, see how they're doing. We've had many, like I'm sure most of you, that especially the older group, that are not coming to church still. But when you call them and when you ask them and see how they're doing, and then you let them talk a little bit, hey, you could, did you ever consider leaving a front gift to the church? And especially if you are going to do it yourself. And again, it doesn't matter what that amount is. It's just if they know someone is doing it, people want to be a part of a part of something like that. So thank you for joining us. That's pretty much what I have to say. And we'd love to answer any questions. Between Ray and I, we have over 50 years of fundraising experience. Plan giving is really not our forte, but we dabble in it when we need to. So thank you, Steve, very much.
Thank you, Bill. I was thinking, poor Gary Wallner. He's in every one of these town halls, and the one he doesn't get to, you've committed him.
I know. I want to give him a little shout out. So
we love Gary, and Gary's been an active member here and presenting to this group. So we miss him tonight, but we definitely all know and value Gary. So we've had a lot of ideas, a lot of thoughts. We have Charlie DeMoss here. I think we want to spend some time talking about and I think all 3 of our speakers alluded to it. The need for, there really needs to be a professional kind of lens put on this too, right? Especially if these are very large gifts, or as Father said, whether they're restricted gifts or they're non-cash gifts. They could be different assets. So there can be complexities. It sometimes takes a little greater level of sophistication. And I think Charlie, if you can give even a little bit of a quick intro, Charlie, and share some of your own thoughts and perspectives on this topic, that would be fantastic. And are you on mute? We still have you out there, Charlie? Charlie, you're there. You're on mute. Let's see.
Steve, he's on mute. He's still on mute.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, now we can, Charlie. Yes, we can.
Okay.
Absolutely.
All right. So I grew up in St. Mary's Greek Orthodox Church in Minneapolis with, long before Father James was born, but I was a student of Father Anthony Cunyeras, and as a sidelight, I constantly tell our bulletin person, I says, please put in the bulletin, remember the church in your will. Now I remember where I got it from. I got it from Father Anthony because I was his mentor. But back in 1992, I had given, my brother and I had been given some gifts to the church to memorialize my mom and dad. And it was, $10 or $15,000. And so I went to the president, I says, we've decided now to find something to memorialize. And they said, the money has been spent by the church. I says, oh my goodness. Well, that's okay. But here's what I'd like to do. I'd like to open an endowment fund so that the funds that I put into that and for whomever else I get to put into it will remain in there. The principal will remain in perpetuity, and the income and the appreciation can be spent. So as a consequence, he said, oh, I can give you $2,000 from the church fund to start it. And I says, okay. And so we started in 1992, and then I started talking to parishioners that I'd known for a long time, and they gradually started giving money. I gave money. And then I said, well, we need to have a little bit of a committee to oversee this, because one of the drawbacks of an endowment fund is people will say, well, who's watching over the money? It's not transparent. They get a little concerned. I've actually had people tell me, we need to be more transparent. Well, at first I didn't want to make it totally transparent because everybody would want to spend the money as it started to grow in value. But I do publish the donors, and I publish the amounts, and I encourage others to join in with the donors. So I also have encouraged the people to name themselves or a loved one or someone who's passed away. That is a very strong argument for getting money from people. I sent Father James and Kristen the bulletin from the church, as well as the bulletin I have from my law school. But the one from the church, I've listed names of every time someone gives some money that's over $1,000, they're listed there. If it's over 10,000, it's listed again as a separate group. So, and on the committee, who's going to be on the committee? Well, in 1992, I was the only one on the committee, and then I started saying, who's giving me money? And so the people that were giving me 10 or 15 or 20,000, they became committee members all of a sudden. We've had people that give to the building fund a couple of 200,000-300,000, and I asked them to be on the committee. So now we have about 5 to 7 people from time to time on the committee. If they go off, then we bring someone else that's been a big donor, because the big donors are the ones that will ask other people they understand what it is to give to the church. They understand the pleasure and the enjoyment they get from giving. And so that's part of it. And then of course we had a building fund, and on the building fund, I had to name rooms and so on, but naming the rooms and putting the name on the buildings brought in $3 million. So those things are things you kind of have to do to draw the people in, because some people, they want some recognition. But right now, the ongoing endowment fund shows the people that have been giving. And oh, here it is right here. There's a display of it. You can see these are the people that have given over 10,000. And then people that have given for someone else. I gave a gift for Father Anthony and Mary Conyers because I want them to be remembered in perpetuity. The Trapilas were one of them. Pete and Kula baptized my son John. So I gave it. From now on, that's going to be in every bulletin that goes out with the General Endowment Fund. So this has been a strong motivator to get people to give money, because they see their name and they say, hey, I want to get my name in it. The Lombro family just gave me $5,000. Get their name in the thing. And when they see they're in the 5,000, maybe they'll say, hey, maybe I'll bump that up to 10,000. So it's been a big winner for getting money, and getting it in a kind and gentle way, and in a way that people remember, and in a way that our community knows that this money is going to be carefully managed, and only the interest and appreciation will be spent. We have used the interest and appreciation to reduce the debt by making mortgage payments of around $300,000 in the last few years. So we do it for, obviously the money that's paid out of the endowments is only for, as Father James mentioned, just for things that are pertinent to the church. It's, it can't be for something that someone says, well, I want to have something that's outside of the church. That's not recommended. The other thing I've found that is very effective is that the required minimum distribution from an IRA around November every year, I put a notice in the bulletins that now is the time to think seriously about giving from your required distribution from your IRA if you're 70 and a half. That law has been changed now to 72, but the people that were 70 and a half at the time, they get to give the money. I found that a very simple way, and I tried to encourage people to do this, is to ask the brokerage firm or the bank to please open a checking account for my IRA. As a consequence, every time you write a check out of that account, it can be just the $100 a week stewardship or something like that, or it can be a $10,000 gift. It's a simple and easy way to empty out a portion of your RMD. You'd be surprised. Some people have to take out $100,000 or $200,000 or $300,000 from the IRA. I have clients that have to take $300,000 out of their IRA every year because their account has grown to that level. So that checking account on the IRA is an effective way to get people to easily give money from the 70 and a half or 72 to give money to the church. But of course, we kind of publish that for the church. The other thing that's very easy for the client, for the patient, parishioner to do is to just have on your bank account, your savings account, just say, please have payable on death 10% of my of this savings account to go to Holy Trinity. I'll use Holy Trinity because that's easy for me to explain it to you. On the brokerage account, I have clients that may have POD accounts, payable on death, or transfer on death. Those two things are very simple. There's no legal work required in doing it. And once you do that, you say, I want 5, 10, 15, 20% of my account on my passing to go to Holy Trinity Greek Orthodox Cathedral. So those are things that you can do. The other thing is that, and I'm happy to see that Father James has things for the will, but you know, one thing I try to tell the parishioners so that they don't get, because people are worried about going to a lawyer and paying $4,000 or $5,000 to do something very simple. I say, go to LegalZoom and check out the form that the Archdiocese has presented. And if they say it's okay, then put it in your will, as just to bring the cost down and to make it easy for them to give money to the church, because going to a lawyer is something that, you know, I'm a lawyer, I've never practiced law, but I know all of my brothers were lawyers, and they know that the lawyers do charge for their services. So I try to avoid that. Another thing that the donor advised fund that Maria talked about is a very effective way to encourage people to give highly appreciated stock. In the endowments, of course, I ask the people, please look at your account, and I have it in the form. I says, highly appreciated stock held over 1 year with the very lowest cost basis transferred to the church. It's to the church brokerage account, because the stock has to come from that person's brokerage account to Holy Trinity's brokerage account, and I liquidate it there, and I send them a letter, or the church sends them a letter, that high and low of the stock on the day it was received is what they can have as a gift. And I always try to, you know, if you're having a broker at your church, ask them to please discount as much as they can the commission so that the church benefits. But the church does send a letter out to the parishioner of the high and low of the stock on the day it was donated. That's what the IRS requires as the value of the gift, not the proceeds of the thing, because the proceeds are usually a little bit less because of the sales charge. I can't think of anything else that I was thinking about. Let's see, we were talking about.
Well, Charlie, yeah,
yes.
you can take a look at your notes, see if there's anything there you also wanted to, that we maybe didn't have a chance to touch on. But, you know, I think as we've heard, and one of the things, again, bringing us together here is, you know, for many of our parishes, we do have, you know, some small cadre of either attorneys, financial advisors,
Right.
Others. But if you don't have that in your parish, and I know we have parishes of multiple, you know, varying sizes here on the call, you know, part of this is our network. The reason for bringing us together is to extend, you know, the walls of our own parish to the metropolis and across the metropolis or across the archdiocese, you know, with Father and Stacy. So if you're seeking help or need help, you know, certainly first look within the parish, and if we can be assistants at the metropolis level, if we can be assistants at the archdiocese level. But, you know, certainly, you know, Charlie, you know, touched on, there are some sort of technicalities around this that you want to make sure you do these things right. Again, you can, you know, talk to a fellow, a nearby parish that maybe has been doing this and can share some of their experiences. Charlie, was there anything else on the list? And we definitely want to open it up to questions and comments.
Well, I just want to say that this giving has a long-term positive effect, and that's what you want to do. And number two is bring in to your team people that know about how to give and are comfortable in giving, because they're going to be motivated to ask others. So I want to thank you for giving me the time to share these thoughts.
Oh, Charlie, thank you very much for joining us and being here tonight. I know we do want to open up for questions. So if there's any questions, you can put them in the chat or ask them, come off of mute and ask them. But we actually have one other professional fundraiser on the call that kind of, we all know her as not only the Metropolis Communications Director, but Development Director and many, many other hats that she wears. But Kristen, I know, and your professional past and present, you deal with this very topic. So if you wanted to add a few thoughts here, and then again, please, if there's questions, either in the chat or feel free to come off of mute. So Kristen.
Great. Thanks so much, Steve. And it's so wonderful to have all of you with us this evening. I just wanted to add on to what Maria and Bill were both saying, specific to fundraising. My background is very similar to theirs in terms of fundraising. I've been doing fundraising for almost 30 years in the nonprofit sector. And the relationship building is really so crucial to any level of development, the entry level to the legacy giving. And so you can't underestimate the importance of the communication tool that goes with development and telling your story and being visible. And being visible doesn't mean just sending a letter during the holiday season or those few key times during the year when you're asking for money. People want to hear from you. They want to hear about your progress. They want to hear about the impact of what is going on. So that way, when the communication comes later, that gives them an opportunity to offer a contribution that they have already seen and witnessed, hopefully personally, the progress of whether or not it's the Metropolis or your parish or whatever nonprofit somebody might be affiliated with. Too many times, I think communication is too driven by asking for the donation instead of using that communication for positive reinforcement of progress. And so please keep that in mind. It's a crucial component of fundraising, that people see the good works that you're doing and don't always think that, oh, here they come again, this letter, they're going to be asking for money. Because if you're always sending those letters asking for money, you're not going to get the return on that as much as if you are educating people along the way. The other thing is the communication that you have with people, especially with your donors. And again, whether or not it's at the parish or the Metropolis level, it's picking up the phone and calling people and thanking them. It's that one-on-one contact, giving them the opportunity to have someone to speak with. We saw a little bit of an example of this with the Stewardship Zoom with Bill Marianis, where he did some of those parish visitation role models that some of you may have been on. It's similar to that, but even just to call and say, thank you so much for your donation. Thank you for your stewardship. I just want to thank you for being a steward of our parish. We appreciate it so much. Know you've been in the community for a long time. Is there anything we can do to help you? We hope to see you at church on Sunday, even if it's just a message, because those touch points have lasting impacts. You have, I don't know if it was Bill or Maria that talked about, you have somebody that gives $25 every year, $25 at Christmas. They put the money in for the flowers for the epitaph, whatever they do. And then all of a sudden upon their passing, you find out that they've left you a significant gift. But you need to cultivate those relationships now for the benefit for later. The other thing I can't emphasize enough also is online giving, recurring giving, making it easy for people to give, because that is crucial. We've certainly implemented that at the Metropolis. We've had a recurring giving program that we have available both online and through our contribution envelopes. We just launched a text to give program so people can donate. They can scan a QR code, they can text a phone number, the donation form comes right back to their mobile device, and they can contribute that way. Today's society, everyone's dependent on these. And so we have to make sure that we as institutions keep up with technology and we make it easy for people, but we also have to remember that, especially in our parishes, we are dealing with cross-generational people, and that not everybody's going to give online. Not everybody is going to give on a mobile device. Some people still want to write the check, put the envelope in the tray on Sundays. So you can't pigeonhole the way you get people to contribute to your community, because you have to remember the diverse audience that you have. And it's never too early to start estate planning. I've got mine back on my shelf behind me. My estate plan is done. God willing, it won't have to get into place for a long time, but you have to put it into place now and encourage others to do the same thing. So thank you, Steve, so much for that opportunity. I think most of you, all of you should know how to reach me, since I send you the emails with the Zoom information. So you can certainly reach out to me directly if you have any other questions, or if there's anything I can do to assist in my role as Director of Development for the Metropolis. So thank you.
Hey, Steve, this is Bill. So calling the parishioners is so important. I mean, I can't emphasize that. Like Kristen said, we call donors at the hospital for over $100. And sometimes I'll just say, thank you for your contribution. Of course, you don't say the amount. And then I just stop and I wait to see if they want to respond. And sometimes it's a quick call, 5 seconds and you're off. Other times they want to talk and they want to say something. And it could be good or bad, but that's okay. You just listen. Listening is a powerful tool, especially in the fundraising world. Thank you.
Absolutely, Bill. So do we have any questions? And in addition to questions, some examples. Again, one of the things we like doing on these town halls is hearing from other parishes and examples. Father
There's a
Ted,
question, yeah.
I think it's important. The reason I think it's really critical to have a plan before you accept plan giving is because a lot of the plans that the parish wants to do the plans need to be confirmed and approved by the metropolis and by the Metropolis Art and Architecture Committee. His Eminence needs to sign off on those plans so that those plans now are something that people are giving toward, which will later on be okayed. We don't want to have plans and then people give for things that aren't going to be actually canonical or even within the framework of the Orthodox Church. Some people want to give an icon, for example, that may not match with the iconography that the Metropolitan has okayed. So I think it's really important, and that's just an example. People might want to give to different things and structures within the church and the parish that need to be understood that this is part, that the church is something that is sacred, and it has to be, we're related. It's not just we give to our local parish as if it's disconnected from the archdiocese or the diocese. The plans have got to be within the limits of our canon law. So I would say that it's important to develop a plan, to share the plan with the Metropolitan and the Art and Architecture Committee. And then I think then you can start saying, well, this is what we're raising money for, and we cannot deviate from that plan because this is what is in line with the Orthodox faith. Anyway, I think that's important to put out there up front. If we don't put things out up front, we're going to have people giving a lot of money for things that they may want to see, but which may not be approved. Okay.
thanks. Thank you, Father Ted. Yeah. And, whether it's projects or it's iconography, or as we talked about earlier, just a strategy and mission for the parish. And, being able to, as I direct the gifts, but if the gifts are given within the context of what the parish is really aiming to do, you can imagine how much more of an impact that gift can have. And we've often talked about strategic planning, but what is that mission of our parishes? What is that the intent? What is it we're trying to do? And hopefully the generous givers are going to advance that mission of the parish. Thank you, Father Ted. Thanks for joining as always. I know we have Father Paul Paris out there too. So thanks for joining, Father Paul. It's always good to have you. Other questions? Any experiences that people would like to share of what may have occurred at their own parishes? And good examples, and maybe not so good, but we'll protect the innocent and not mention names. But where have things worked, or has your parish experienced some challenges in trying to execute a planned gift? Anyone have any experiences? All right, I'll fill a little bit in, but please would welcome others. I know in my home parish, right? As I mentioned earlier, we were the beneficiaries of two, very significant six-figure gifts, and as we've heard earlier in this discussion, from people that you did not anticipate or expect, or sometimes even know they were out there. In another example, we had a real estate transaction that wanted to be given, but as Father Jim said, it wasn't so clean, and that gift actually wasn't made just because there was a lot of encumbrances and other things. So, we've been fortunate, but we, haven't been doing it in a proactive way. It's just been a very ad hoc, or it has happened, and there's a lot of opportunity there. Unfortunately, as we all know, this past couple of years, we've all lost a lot of very dear people in our parishes and even loved ones. And the sooner we can have these conversations, the sooner we can put some of these programs in place. As I've said, I view it as the foundation of our church that we inherited from those early people that built the churches, that we all get to pray in every week and every day. What will we do for the next generation? Other questions? I know we've got about just a few minutes left, and we'll have any closing thoughts from our speakers, but any questions from the group? See Pamela. Oh, Pamela, good point on slides. Sorry, real quick on the slides. What I'll do is I have Father's slides, but Charlie and Bill and Maria have shared some other artifacts, some other examples and things. What I'll try to do, I'll compile everything into an appendix to Father's deck. And as we always do, Kristen will post the recording. We'll also post the presentation. So if you just give us, a day or two, because I'll want to, make sure we got a lot of different pieces and examples of things that hopefully you'll find useful that we'll want to put together, and maybe some links too. So
I was just going to mention, Steve, that other example that I emailed you the other day from Las Vegas, from their newsletter. That was a nice, concise list that's always great to have an example of something that you might be able to adapt to your parish. So if you have that handy to share.
I do. So again, these will be the types of things we will put into the overall presentation, so you have everything in one place. But Kristen was able to share this. Let's see, there we go. So yeah, this was wonderful, Kristen, and we'll again make sure that it'll be available to everyone. So if there aren't any additional questions, I'll ask our speakers if there's any closing comments. We do hope that tonight we've kind of broadened the topic of stewardship and looked at, I would say, less traditional ways of supporting our parishes and receiving gifts. If you've got questions, if you have any follow-up, again, we are intended to be a network to help each other, to help our parishes, and to strengthen the parishes, because our metropolis is only strengthened by the might of our parishes, and our archdiocese by the strength of our metropolises, and in the patriarchate by the strength, frankly, of our archdiocese. So it is important work that we all do.
Steve, so like tomorrow, we all know St. Demetrios Day. So instead of just having the priest, like our priest does, call parishioners, if we all know someone that's named Demetrios, Dimitra, whatever, call them tomorrow. Say Koine Pala, light a candle if you're going to go to church. Do the same thing for St. Catherine Day in November. Same thing for St. Spiridon, St. Barbara, St. Nicholas. Especially these last 3 months, so it kind of goes with what Maria's saying. People do give more at the end of the year, but they want to hear from us. And the priest can't do it all themselves. They're only one man. So we all need to do our part.
Great point,
And
Bill.
I would just end by saying that so many people don't give just because they're not asked. So don't assume that people, think of these things, and it's important to ask.
Father Jim, thank you, Maria. Father Jim and Charlie, any closing thoughts? Or Charlie first, if you have any other additional thoughts, or Charlie, otherwise we'll have Father Jim close us out. And Father Ted, if I can put you on the spot and give us a closing prayer. So I'll give you a minute or two just to get ready for that, if that works.
For
Charlie?
parishioners that have over 11.7 million, and we may have parishioners with that kind of money, you might want to suggest to them that they take the amount over the 11.7 million and put it into a charitable account that their children can manage, and hopefully give some of that to the church over the forthcoming years. It leaves a legacy for the donor for many years to come, and saves 40% of the, let's say there's 20 million, $8 or $9 million is 40% of that starts to add up. So they can save 40% of their estate by just putting it into a charitable trust that benefits the church. Hopefully, that's it. Thank you.
Yeah, great thought, Charlie. I mean, for those folks that have estates that large, that certainly is a way to give it to the church and not to Washington. So,
Right.
Father Jim, or good.
One more thing real quick. Tell your children too you're going to do it so they're not surprised, especially if it's a large gift. So they don't get angry with the church or whatever. Tell them ahead of time and tell them the reason you're doing it, because then maybe that will instill something in them to think about it when it's time for them to do their plan giving.
Well, we hope so, Bill. We do what we do to find, to see our children and grandchildren and great grandchildren one day.
You've got to teach your children to love the church.
Yep. Father Jim, any closing?
I want to thank you for the opportunity to share, and I want to encourage people to go to the resources we showed them on the website, copy and paste. People's attention spans are very short. So take a little bit of information and post it in the bulletin. Did you know this? Did you know that? Appreciated assets, what Charlie said about writing a check out of your IRA, gifts of appreciated stock. This is the time of year to do that, and people should feel free to copy and paste anything that we've produced and use it as their own to get the information out. We also produce a lot of graphics for social media, which you can pull off of our Facebook page, the Stewardship Outreach and Evangelism Facebook page, and use them on your own website and Facebook and social media as well. So we just want to remember people's attention span is very short, and it's getting shorter by the day. So take little sound bites or little bits of information and share it to pique their curiosity, and then be prepared to follow up when they contact you.
Excellent. Thank you, Father Jim. As always, I know you join us every town hall from the East Coast, and it is extremely late. We certainly want to wish you a Chronia Pola and a happy Names Day. Takatostisis, many, many years in the continued service of the church and being here with all of us. Stacy Stathulis, thank you for joining, and you're always there too. They're on the East Coast, and or at least in Columbus, but at least I think Eastern time zone, if I'm not mistaken. But appreciate you joining too. Father Ted, would you like to bless us and close out this evening with a prayer for us?
In the name of the Father, and the Son, and the Holy Spirit, amen. O Lord and Savior Jesus Christ, our God, save your people and bless your inheritance. Preserve the fullness of your church and sanctify those who love the beauty of your house. For you are holy always, and to you do we send up glory, to the Father and the Son and the Holy Spirit. Amen.
Thank you, Father Ted.
Thank you, Father.
Good night.
When you
Good
pull out,
night,
Father
everyone.
Jim.
Kronya
Good
pula.
night.
Kanya pula.